Welcome to video lesson 11.3 for Algebra 1. I'm going to show you how to divide polynomials using long division. And this is going to be a lot of process of how this gets done, so I'll try to explain everything step by step. So let's say we wanted to do the example of how do we divide the polynomial 3x squared minus 4x plus 13 by x plus 3. So the first thing we want to do is set it up in this way. We're going to take x plus 3, and we're going to try and divide it into 3x squared minus 4x plus 13. The first thing you want to do is check and make sure that you have descending order in your exponents. And we do. We have 2, 1, and then 0. And also make sure that no exponents are missing. I'll show you what to do if they are missing in the next one. Next thing you want to do is make sure the same thing is written on the outside. Descending order for your exponents on the outside. We have a 1, and then we have the constant 3. Once we've got all that done, we can proceed as follows. We start with the outside, the largest exponent, and we ask ourselves, how many times will x go into 3x squared? And the answer, of course, is 3x. Another way to ask that question is to say, how many times, if I took 3x squared and divided it by x, what would I be left with? Well, I'd be left with 3x. And the reason you do that is because then you multiply 3x by x, and that gives you your 3x squared. And notice you write it directly underneath the matching exponent. Now, you can't forget about this 3, so you also have to multiply 3x by 3, and of course you would get a positive 9x, and notice that you write that directly underneath your exponents of 1. From here, we're going to subtract everything. So I like to put a parenthesis around everything to show that I am subtracting. 3x squared minus 3x squared is nothing, and you will get nothing by design there every time. And then negative 4x squared minus 9x squared is a negative 13x. Not x squared, just x. So negative 4x minus 9x is a negative 13x. That's a really important part. Don't forget to distribute that minus sign in. And then if you want, you can bring down your positive 13, and the whole thing starts over. And the reason I know that it keeps going is because my highest degree exponent is a 1, and it's also a 1 here in my new line that I'm working with, so I know that I can keep going from this. So again, let's ask myself, if I took negative 13x and divided it by x, what would I have left? I would have a value of negative 13. And everything just starts over like we did before. Okay, so I say negative 13 times x gives me negative 13x. Negative 13 times 3 is a negative 39. I draw a line, and then I subtract. Negative 13x plus 13x gives me 0, and I should get 0 there. And then 13 minus a negative 39 becomes 13 plus 39, which would give me 52. All right, so I have a remainder of 52. Another way to write the answer would be 3x minus 13 plus 52 divided by x plus 3. This part down here, since this is my remainder. So that right there is our first example of how to divide using long division. We're going to do 2 more examples, but that's the basic process. Okay, box 2, what is 2x to the third plus 3x minus 15 divided by x plus 1? So again, we're going to start by taking our x minus 1 on the outside, and then we want to divide into. Now, I've got a 2x to the third. I have no x squared terms, so I'm going to write in a positive 0x squared. That's an important part because I want to make sure I have descending order and no term is forgotten. So 2x to the third, a 0x squared. I do have a positive 3x. And then lastly, a 15. Okay, and then the process begins. Here we go. 2x to the third divided by an x would give me 2x squared. 2x squared multiplied by x would give me 2x to the third. 2x squared multiplied by negative 1 is a negative 2x squared. So now notice, if I did not write that 0x squared in at the beginning, I would have nowhere to put this 2x squared because they need to line up right underneath their matching exponents. So 2x to the third minus 2x to the third is nothing. 0 minus a minus becomes a positive 2x squared. And then I can bring down my positive 3x. And the process begins over. How many times does 2x squared divide by 2x. Well, if I do that, I'd be left with a positive 2x. And that's because 2x times 2x gives me a positive 2x squared. I can erase this line if I want. Okay, and then a 2x times a negative 1 is a negative 2x. And notice how everything is being shifted over to the right, and all of my columns are staying lined up. That's really important. 2x squared minus 2x squared is nothing. 3x minus a negative 2x becomes a positive 5x, and I can bring down the minus 15. Now at this point, I ask myself again, okay, if I took 5x and divided it by x, what would I be left with? And I would have a positive 5. 5 times x gives me a 5x, and then 5 times the negative 1 gives me negative 5. Again, I put parentheses around everything, and I subtract. So negative 15 plus 5 is worth negative 10. So the right way to answer this would be 2x squared plus 2x plus 5 minus 10 over an x minus 1. And that comes from the remainder divided by the divisor right here, x minus 1. So that's what we're looking for. Kind of a long process, but if you keep everything nice and organized, you should be good to go. Okay, we'll do one more. We want 4x plus a 9x to the third minus 7 divided by negative 5 plus 3y. So I'm going to rewrite everything and say this is going to be 3y minus 5 divided into, I've got a 9y to the third. I have 0y squareds. I have a positive 4x, and I have a negative 7. So again, let's make sure we write everything in descending order. And here we go. If I take 9y to the third, divide by 3y, I would get 3y squared. 3y squared times 3y is 9y to the third. 3y squared times negative 5 is a negative 15y squared. I draw a line and I subtract. 9y to the third minus 9y to the third is 0 by design. 0 minus a minus, that's a positive 15y squared. And I bring down a positive 4x. Okay, and we start over. How many times does 15y squared divide 3y? That would give me a positive 5y. 5y times 3y is 15y squared. 5y times a negative 5 is a negative 25y. Oh, this should be a y. I don't know why. Y. Okay, moving right along, I would again get 0 by design. And then 4y minus a negative 25y is a positive 29y. And I bring down my minus 7. Okay, 29y divided by 3y. I can go into that exactly 29 thirds of a time. So that's kind of a funky one. 29 thirds. All right, 29 thirds times 3y gives me 29y. Let me see if I messed up somewhere. All right, it really looks like it is this funky. I double checked my work, so everything looks good. So you just keep going with it. So 29 thirds times my negative 5 becomes, what is that? I'm going to write it as negative 145 thirds. Yikes. Negative 145 thirds. And then again, by design, I should get this to cancel out, which it does. And then I want negative 7 minus a minus, so it's negative 7 plus the quantity of 145 thirds. And that, as a fraction, ends up being 124 thirds. So a way to represent the answer would be 3y squared plus 5y plus 29 thirds plus 124 thirds divided by 3y minus 5, which is kind of a ridiculous way to do it. But that is the right answer, and that's how we got it. All right, good luck. We'll talk more about this in class.